Benj Miller, you help founders, entrepreneurs. How do you do that?
I primarily work with them in conjunction with working with their senior leadership team. So the simplest way to think about it is I facilitate quarterly offsites for those teams. There's usually a few sessions that we do prior to those quarterly offsites that get them up and running with the 4 tools for confident execution, just to get their business right. And then we spend some time getting really clear on a roadmap, which is just a 1-page document that gets them really clear on what they're trying to do, as well as who they want to be, as well as how they want, like, how are we going to operate? So people talk about culture in the workplace all the time. And typically they don't know what that means. But we actually start with the end in mind and help them engineer the culture that they want to have. So that's on there. And then we help them identify the bets that they're going to make in order to be the people that they want to be, to get to where they want to go. And bets is a great word that's not commonly used in business, but it's great because it really puts into context that we've got to make bets. We've got to take our energy, resources, money, priority, leadership, people, time, and put those in a direction that we believe will pay off. And so what are the things that we're going to do to make us more efficient, more effective in the future than we are right now, while moving us toward that destination that we want to get to? So it's super fun. It's so much of leadership dynamics ends up, as you know, being the interpersonal stuff that gets in the way. So sometimes I feel like a therapist as much as you probably are a therapist.
Sometimes I feel like an entrepreneur, man, maybe as much
Sure.
as you are.
Yeah.
So where did you learn in that process?
Great question. I started my first company when I was, I think, 24. So I'm 20. Yeah, that's right. I'm 21 years into it. I still have my first company. It's still up and running. Awesome company, has its own leadership team that operates without me. But that was a brand and marketing company. And so since I was 24 years old, I've been facilitating senior leadership teams through brand conversations. And there's so much, when we talk about that 1-page roadmap, there's so much of that overlaps the clarity you have when you get really clear about your brand. So in some ways, I've been doing this for 21 years. And then I brought in a facilitator into one of my businesses. I merged 2 of my own businesses, and it was the perfect time. We needed some sort of framework to merge these 2. So I brought in a guy, and he just gave such clear, simple systems for us to run the business on. And my company is called System and Soul. So the systems that I stole from him that worked really well, paired with my soulful leadership and what I had learned and grown on the brand and the culture, the leadership, the people development side, they just needed to go together. And so when I got the opportunity to make a little bit of a career transition, I wanted to try to do what that guy did in the session room with companies. And I did it, and I absolutely fell in love with it. It was like, this is what I was meant to do. This is where I was meant to be. I just have a gift in helping a room get on the same page and get really, really focused.
Are you able to explain a little bit what those systems are?
Yeah, sure. So there's a bunch, but the 4 that we call the 4 tools for confident execution is just like the blocking and tackling of every business. The first is what I often refer to as the most underutilized tool in all of business, which is simply an organizational chart or an org chart. Everybody's heard it. Everybody's like, yes. And nobody has one that's actually updated and future thinking. They just use it to organize their people. What we can do is we're literally structuring our business through this tool. And when we do it correctly, we paint a picture of like what is most important in our business. With the org chart, we in one visual, we can illustrate like, what is this business? What are the functions of the business? How does it operate? What are the missions of every function? So we build these functions of the different business, but to get clear on what is the mission of this. Like, why do we have it? Why does this mission exist within this business? And we can take that down to every single seat in the whole organization and point them to a mission that points to the mission of the organization. We can get really clear on how does this seat or this team or this function win? What does winning look like? It's really easy. You build 2 or 3 KPIs, key performance indicators, which leads to the second tool, which I'll get to in a second. But just that org chart, just paints a beautiful picture. This is what the business is. These are the core functions. These are all the roles that support those core functions. This is who people report to. This is who reports to them. And then we can get into, decision-making authority and some other things after that. And we have some ways of testing if a person's right for the seat that they're in and the seat that they're leading. But those KPIs, if we roll them up, if you think basically, if you've got 3 to 5, 6 functions, core functions in a business, take 2 or 3 metrics from each one of those and roll them up. And now you have an organizational scoreboard. If these functions are winning, then the organization by default should be winning. And so it's really nice at the end of every week to go, hey, did we win this week or not? Like, so part of what we're doing is building dignity into the business. And one of the ways we can dignify the people is giving them the clarity of, like, did you win or not? Hey, you were here for 40 hours. Did you win? Right? Are you going home winning, or do we need to reset and change some stuff up to do something different next week? So that's the second one. The third one is how we call them weekly syncs, but they're your team meetings. They're highly structured. They're highly on point. Everybody's like, no, please, not another meeting. But if you do this right, it should eliminate probably 4 or 5 other meetings that you're having in the business right now that are just wasting time. So it's for your team that you work on. And we're going to keep those KPIs on track, right? If they're off track, we got to talk about it, fix it. It's a team game. We got to keep our objectives on track, which is the 4th tool. So I'll get to that in a second. Make sure that those are on track, because those are your most important, like our quarterly objectives or OKRs or rocks. People have lots of different words for them. What are the things we're doing to mature the business? So your KPIs are performing, your objectives are transforming, right? If we're not performing, then we have no today. If we're not transforming, we have no tomorrow. So both companies need to be thinking about how are we performing and how are we transforming. And then we spend the majority of that weekly sync time as a place where we can get together and collaborate, and we can talk about the biggest opportunities that are crossing our plate that are outside of just my function. And we need to have a cross-functional conversation or a corporate conversation about this thing. We call them opportunities. It could be things that are like in your way, roadblocks, obstacles, issues. The reason we call it opportunities is just a mind game, because everything's an opportunity when we get to the other side of it. So if we can bring it to the team and solve it together, now we're winning and we're creating opportunities for the business to advance. So those are the 4 tools. So org chart, your scoreboard, your weekly sync, and your quarterly objectives. Those are the 4 tools for confident execution. If a team's doing that, they're winning. Now, there's another side of it, the dark side, which is they've got to be healthy. But we get them up and running on these 4 tools for confident execution. And that starts to give them the confidence that whatever we build on that roadmap, they can execute against. They can actually make progress toward that vision with that strategy.
Then you have a book, Renegades. What's that all about?
Yeah, it's a little bit of my story, and a lot of the hard lessons learned as an early entrepreneur with, not as much help as there is out there now. So in a lot of ways, it's the book I wish I would have had when I was, 21 years ago when I was starting. But there's 2 parts of it. One, to really let founders feel seen. I don't think many people really understand what it looks like to found an organization and go through the different levels of growth, and how at every level your leadership has to be a step ahead, which means it's tremendous amount of personal growth to lead a company that's growing. And at the same time, you're constantly dealing with new things in this business that you've never dealt with before. And so how do you do that? And what do you surround yourself with? What are some mental models for how you think about it? So the back half of the book is more kind of some of the tools and some of the stuff we've been talking about, how to get really practical with having a place for everything. And to get really there, we talk about the 6 shifts that you have to make, from your like early day thinking to go from like a renegade founder to a renegade leader. We don't want you to lose your renegade. That's the other thing. And why this book needed to exist is because most books tell leaders how they need to stop being such a renegade, right? You had this great strength. It was great to start the company, but now it's not a startup anymore. So you need to grow up. And I'm like Peter Pan's my hero. I don't like growing up is not the goal. It's not fun. It's boring. You have to lose a little bit of your soul in order to grow up. So we don't need more Captain Hooks out there running companies. We need Peter Pans running out there, running companies. But the company does need some structure. So there's a tension to manage there. And how we approach that really shapes an organization.
So I'm thinking let's do some live coaching so people can see your work in action here.
I love it.
You work, it sounds like with bigger company. I'm a solopreneur. So my vision is forming virtuous communities to transform the world for good. Okay. So I got 3 branches of that. So the one is virtuous leaders, because the soul of the society reflects the soul of the leaders. So inspiring other virtuous leaders, creating a network of virtuous leaders. I do that through the podcast right now. The second branch is values first parenting, helping parents form loving families, because the family is like the smallest cell of society. It's the smallest society. Where the family goes, their society goes. So for that, what I'm thinking is like live webinars or online courses. And then lastly, values first therapy too, because society is made up of individuals. If individuals are suffering, then society is going to be crippled. So helping individuals to achieve mental health and well-being while respecting traditional values. So I got my private practice for that. So I don't know if that's enough detail, but I wonder, just as a solopreneur, where would you take this? What advice would you give someone in my situation?
Well, that's what's fun, because when like the first thing we'd have to explore is getting really clear on what you want out of it. And that is both a personal selfish and at the same and equally a missional impact kind of thing. Like what actually do you want out of it? I don't know if we can tease that out right
Yeah,
now.
let's give it a shot.
Okay.
Okay. That first of all, I just want to say that's a really helpful framework, but which I haven't really put into words. But there's like a personal, but then there's also the mission, which are sometimes at odds, maybe. Okay, so
Well, they're usually not. We feel like they are until we can get really clear, and then we see how they fit together.
okay,
What most people aren't willing to do is be ridiculously selfish about what they want out of it.
okay, good. I like that. I like the fact that they're not at odds. All right, so personal, I want to be friends with amazing, inspiring people. That's why I'm talking with you right now. That's why I started this podcast. I want to have a lot of flexibility, and I genuinely want to make the biggest impact I can. So I think that does require having money to have flexibility and support my family and all. But also dedicating a lot of time to study, whether it's reading books or talking to smart, experienced people like you. So then in terms of mission, I'm just thinking, well, how do I have the biggest impact? How do I help leaders, help those who help the most? So help leaders 10x their impact that they're already having, help form loving families, so that I'm not the one who's like individually helping everyone, like in my therapy practice. That's what I'm doing. Yeah. But how can I scale it so I can reach more people?
Yeah. Okay. So you're going to lead us into another, you brought something up. I don't think this is a small, subtle shift, but in everything in there, I think what you're looking for is scale for impact. But there's another idea that we haven't introduced yet, which is boundaries. So if we can create really clear boundaries, and your boundaries are which I need to do this, but also maintain enough time for my intellectual curiosity for learning and friends. All right. So if we said, hey, how many hours a week do you like to work? What's great?
Probably like I'm shooting for 35.
Okay. And does that include your time that you want to put toward learning, or you learning?
Yeah, it would. Let's say, yeah.
All right. So how much of the 35 hours do you want to put toward learning?
I think a good goal would be 1 day a week. So what would that be, 7 hours,
Okay.
where I'm just reading, talking to people, and just thinking about the business. So working on rather than in the business.
Okay. So now we have if we reserve that as a boundary, now we have 4 days, or maybe it's only 3. Is it 3 or 4?
4, yeah.
Okay. So let's go. We have 4 days that we want to scale to create as much impact as we possibly can within that boundary. Is that fair?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So now you have your 3. I wasn't taking notes quick enough. You've got your podcast, your courses, and your practice, correct?
Yeah. Right.
All right. So practice is hard to scale, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
It's where you started and why you started the other 2, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's also the only form of income I have.
Yes. Okay. So it sounds like, like I love how clearly, I'm going to mess it up, but Dan Martell says when you're working on your first $1 million as a business, you should not move out of one product, one channel, one conversion, one product. Like it's just one, like master one. And a lot of us want to diversify too early because we think it helps us reach our goals faster, but the reality is it dilutes our focus. So really what you have is the practice that is your revenue stream. So you can't just cut it off. That's real life. So now the question becomes, how much income, in those 4 days, how much of the 4 days do you absolutely need to make the minimum income you need to make so that you can spend the rest of your time on the scale for impact?
Okay, cool.
And as soon as we do that, the next step is, all right, I've got, let's call it 8 hours a week that I can put toward scale for impact. And then you have to get really smart about what is the number one channel, the number one product, the number one way that you can scale for impact. And it might be the courses. And you might end up taking the podcast and saying, well, this is part of my intellectual time, meeting new people, having these conversations, right? So we're not even going to count that. It might be part of your conversion funnel and your intellectual time. So now you're double dipping but it gives you even more purpose and clarity about why you're having podcast conversations, right? And you're then setting goals for how you're going to, over the next 1-3 years, scale the courses, grow the courses, that scale side of the business that has scale to it, so that you can start to whittle back your private practice hours. That's how I would be thinking about building what you're talking about.
That's super helpful. And when you say one product, so does that have to be something that actually builds revenue? So in other words, like it couldn't be the podcast because I don't have any way of.
Not unless your podcast was your ultimate goal. And if it was, the podcast can build revenue. It's a red ocean. It's very bloody. But you can get it to the place where you can get sponsorship, people paying for placements and product placements and commercials. And that could be the thing, which would then give you a triple dip. But if that's the case, then stop doing the courses until you have so much demand from your audience because of your podcast that they're forcing you to do something like that, right? So you already have the demand because your podcast is so big that you've got revenue coming in from sponsors because your podcast is so big and you're making them money, and you go, hey, I could make me money too if I had my own product instead of selling somebody else's product.
Okay, so then it's a decision point of, well, what is my one product? Is it going to be the podcast, course? Okay, cool.
And some of that's just follow your passion, follow your energy, like what gets you most excited. Do you want the pressure to have 1 million people listening to your podcast? Like, are you driven by that game to grow that? Or are you driven by, hey, how could I drive a digital product, a course? They're both going to require a ton of marketing because you need a ton of scale for either of those.
So, okay, this one product idea is at odds with kind of the way I was looking at it, which is going for a synergy. So, for example, I do public speaking, and with the podcast, with public speaking, with the webinars, whatever, the way I saw it is it kind of like feeds off each other. Like when I'm speaking, people hear about my therapy practice, so that they may come to me through that, or that may inspire them to get on the podcast, to follow my podcast, or it builds my ethos so that now when I'm pitching the course, people are like trust me more. But it sounds like you're saying that that's the wrong way of looking at it.
I wouldn't say wrong. I would say not the most optimal. So right now, what you're talking about is like I just heard like this spaghetti mess of stuff, and if we could untangle that, then and we can put it in something, we can look at it like a product ladder. And so you're super easy, accessible to everybody. I've got my podcast. And that I then want to capture some emails, and I want to do, a weekly email with best thought of the week, whatever it is. And from there, I want to move people into my therapy practice. Now we've got a straight line. Go back up to the top. Well, the podcast is one way they get in there, but I'm going to do public speaking. And public speaking, the goal of that is also to get people on the email. Okay, so now I've got two avenues to grow my email list. My email list is the thing that gets me into it grows both of the other two, because it grows the podcast and it grows the speaking, but it's the people that get people into the private practice, the counseling practice. If you play that out and just like untangle the mess, each one is going to get clearer on what's the objective. Why am I doing this public speaking? You can't get off stage and say, hey, I've got a podcast, I've got a private practice, and hire me for coaching and take this course. Like, it's just too much. What's the one next step you want everybody to do? And if each thing has a one next step, now you can see how they all fit together. But you also might have to be willing to say, hey, I'm not going to do this thing yet, because it's really hard to be a world-class podcast. It's really hard to be a world-class speaker. It's really hard to be a world-class practitioner. Like those things are all hard. So now you're saying, hey, I'm going to be world-class in 5 things, right? So really saying, for the next however long, year, 3 years, I'm going to focus my craft on this thing. And here's how it builds into that product ladder that I can move people along in a relationship with you. It's not just selling them more stuff, but deepening the relationship because of the value that you have to give.
That product ladder is a super helpful concept. It's almost like a org chart for your product.
100%. Yeah.
So in that example that you gave, what would be the product?
Well, that's what you get to decide. What is the ultimate game? If the ultimate game is to be a massive podcast, then you're there. If you want to, have $50,000 speaking engagements, $50,000 speaking engagements, then that's the end game, right? So you've really got to build from the bottom up. What's the most efficient way to get people into the end game?
Okay, so then even if that end game is like the one product, but that it can have like multiple avenues to get there, so that doesn't conflict with the one product idea.
I think so. I think, well, it does conflict with the one channel and one conversion.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay.
But if that's the one place you deviate, I'm not going to hate on you. If you can get clear on what your one product, the bottom is, it's going to make everything else clearer. I just want you to be willing to say not yet to some of the other things that you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that is super helpful. Is there anything that we haven't covered there that I'm missing?
I don't think so. This is the Al Ries in his book called Focus. Al Ries was a great like brand marketing positioning thinker, but he talks about focus, and he talks about, if we go outside, we have millions of kilowatts of energy of light from the sun, and about as bad as it does is gives us a sunburn. But if we take just a few kilowatts and focus it really tight, it can cut through diamonds. Right? So it's literally the power of focus, and our lives are energy, right? Just like the rays from the sun. So if we can focus that energy, it becomes exponentially more powerful.
I just want to highlight what you just did for me here. So first of all, you've clearly read a lot. You know what works, and then but you had a very clear kind of direct way of directing me towards the answer in a way that was engaging and fun and encouraging, while also being like challenging. That like, okay, I need to actually do the work here. I need to get back to the drawing board and think about this.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love those moments where just sometimes it's not a new idea; it's just thinking about something in a new way, and that comes, like you were saying, with time with people that inspire you. You know, to have these intellectual conversations. Um, a lot of this stuff's really hard to do for ourselves. Like I'm on my System and Soul is my 10th business. It might be my hardest. It's so stupid. It's like, shouldn't it be getting easier? Like, I've already done this. I've already learned all the lessons, but it keeps getting harder. Maybe it's because I'm playing a different game, a bigger game. But I still need outside coaches for myself. Even though I feel like I can help about anybody, I can't help myself. It's really, really hard. So just having somebody to like see your thing through their perspective can be so helpful.
So 10 businesses. What is your personal vision, dream to accomplish in your lifetime through your professional work?
Yeah. Well, most of those businesses were accidental. I did my first one kind of accidentally, fell in love with kind of the game of business. I'm really good from the 0 to 1. So stand something up that didn't exist, bring together the team, create a brand, a little marketing presence. Um, and then I love transitioning that to a team to take over and see if they can scale it. Sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. Had all kinds of different levels of success in that. Um, but it wasn't until System and Soul that I could have given an answer to your question. And it's super, super clear. We're on a mission to impact 25,000 companies by the end of this decade.
Why is that? What drives you to do that?
Well, here's the honest answer. Honest answer. When this business happened, I have no other way to say it was divine download. I was kind of in a moment of prayer at my desk in a transition fork in the road kind of moment, and the name, the System and Soul, the name, our model, uh, a mandate on my leadership, and that mission for 25,000 companies, all kind of was just. I think I blanked out for a minute, blacked out, and there it was on my desk. My own handwriting, but I don't remember coming up with it, creating it, working on it. It was just there, and I think the relevance of that number is that it's so big, it leaves me naked because I have no idea how we're going to get there.
That's what I was going to ask.
I have no idea. Every once in a while, I get some ideas. I can see this or that. I've got, but it's becoming more clear as we go, and it's still really, really muddy. I've probably learned what's not going to get us there over the last 3 or 4 years, and that's starting to shift how we think about what are the things that are going to get us there. But as a company, we are, we're stable, so our mindset is shifting from like that as a lens of things we say yes or no to. Like, is there any chance saying yes to that is going to move us closer to that 25,000 number? And if it's not, we have to weigh that against, should we be doing that?
What can I do to help you, man?
Oh man, well, this was fun. I've never been invited into just a straight like let's coach conversation. So that's my happy place. I do that all day long. Love those conversations. Spread the word. System and Soul is a business operating framework that really helps leadership teams get aligned and healthy so they can execute effectively. But part of what we're doing is really helping a lot of founders find their way and find their freedom. We tend to start off with, rosy colored glasses, and then we end up building our own prisons. And we have a really nice paying job that we're in control of, but we don't necessarily have the control to be the person or live the life that we thought we were going to lead. And that can trap us in. I just want to help those founders get out of that prison as much as I can. And I truly believe that small business is it's the lifeblood of our communities. They're better places to work, better places to develop people, better places to create leaders. I want to create businesses that people, if they leave, they're not leaving, they're launching, right? Because they're so capable of doing something huge in the world that they have to go do their own thing. So that's the mission we're on. I don't know how you can help, but I appreciate you having me on the podcast to have a conversation. That's a great start.
How can people follow you, Benj?
You can go to benjmiller.com. That's the easiest way. From there, you can link over to System and Soul. I have a daily leadership email. It's super short. You can read it in about 10, 20 seconds, but it's a great daily reminder or question or thought or tip. It's all stuff we already know as leaders, but we need reminded a lot. So I even read it sometimes. I'm like, oh, dang, that's good. Or I'm convicted, whatever. So that's a good resource for everybody out there. And then I'm pretty active on LinkedIn if you want to have a conversation. And again, you can find all that from benjmiller.com.
Benj, 25,000 companies. You're going to get there.
Thank you, man. I love that. Thanks for the belief.